Your camera. So I have to wait 10 seconds.
Okay.
Cool, that's it through now.
Okay, so The Bodyguard is running from Tuesday the 3rd to Saturday the 7th. International award-winning smash hit musical The Bodyguard is back. How's that sounding? 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check 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 1 2. I'm talking a little bit quieter because
Cool, that'll do.
softly spoken people. Yeah. Sounding good?
Awesome.
Cool. So camera's powering down. Yeah.
Hope that hasn't thrown you off too much.
A little.
Okay. Well, I won't come to you first on the questions then, so you've got a chance to kind of digest as we go through. And then I think we just go and sort of see what the conversation with the people who are here is. Is there anything we should know for the live streaming?
No.
I also do know there's a lot of politics in it. It can be nice to play around with people.
outside just to make sure it's all
Well, you can do the police story on the stop or you can actually make it
That's fine.
full characters.
I'm
well trained.
Caitlin's just popped downstairs, I think, to see if anyone else
Alright.
would like to come over. Can I ask
You
the
can
other?
say to the rest, come on in.
I will say that.
Thank you.
It's important to show that.
We'll take you in to be a private manager.
I think if you could hold me back, I think
There
that
we
would be much
go.
more.
So there's actually 2 things for here.
But then we do like script reviews, work in progress, workshop ideas on a weekly basis.
Give it 25 minutes.
You know,
Huffing and puffing.
Is there anything ahead as well?
That's fine.
we're starting live because
Yeah.
I'm just recruiting and being like, what is on no matter where it is. So potential helps is and nothing up here makes it down.
Very gracious of you.
It's currently one Zoom where I want to be
Hello. The bus is holiday for I love it.
where we're going to be doing another, we're going to be doing another and Frank was very kind.
There's one more thing that we all realize actually,
When I arrived at I'm
Directors will be cast.
And then there will be
It's actually trying to do, but that doesn't mean it has no.
And whenever I come to this place, I'm always like, I'll take That's a whole different I have the whole swap of but like they still have to I'd love to be doing
because I am I'll watch it. So I'd like to make
Okay, sorry for the delay, guys. Had a great conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, Megan, you could come down the front if you like. She doesn't like to.
no, that's it.
Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Louise Louise Stevens. Who am I? I'm Louise Stevens. I'm the creative director of Playwright Studio, and we're working with Eden Court and with Dogstar to make the Spark Festival, which you are now at an event that is part of. Today this session is called "A Career in the Theatre Industry?" ? We have up to an hour and a half, so we'll see how we go. And the format is going to be the panelists will introduce themselves, we'll ask a few questions, pick out a few of the things from there, have a little discussion about that, and then it will be obvious when it's time for your questions, which will have been percolating that whole time, your brilliant questions. I will ask you them, these people will answer them, and then we'll all be at an end. The panel is being live streamed. Hello, at least 0 people, maybe, who knows how many are there at the moment. But it's not going to be recorded, so the things that you say will not be recorded for posterity, you can be assured. Yes, as I say, the title of this is A Career in the Theatre Industry. So we'll talk a little bit for each panellist about maybe how they got started and what they do, the different paths that are there within the industry, and what is a career in theatre anyway, what could that look like, or what does it look like in practice. But before we get into that, we're just going to go round and everyone will just say a little bit about who they are, and that will be the start. And we're going to start on the extreme left with Leslie.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's lovely to see everyone today, and I recognise lots of faces, which is great. So my name is Leslie Mickle, and I am the drama course lead at UHI Inverness.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Yule. I'm from Gospey in Sutherland. I'm an actor.
Hi everybody, my name is Layla Noble. I am a bit of a forward slash, so I'm a freelance director, writer, dramaturg, and I'm currently the resident director at Play Pint a Pint at the Oran Moor in Glasgow.
Hi, I'm Jack McGregor, and I'm a writer-director based in Inverness and working around the country.
Hello, my name is Kenneth McLeod, and I'm a second costume designer, now based in Glasgow, but from up here in Inverness. I'm working everywhere.
Great. And as I say, I'm creative director of Playwright Studio. My background is in dramaturgy, and when we were chatting a little bit earlier, I was talking about the fact I didn't know what a dramaturg was really until I was quite old. But look at me now. But I think that sort of takes us to our first question, which is, how did you get started in what you do now? Maybe I'll jump about a little bit with these questions, so maybe I'll start with Kenny.
Yeah. Sorry, how did
you get started in what you do now?
Yes, fair. So I grew up in Inverness. I did lots of drama classes here at Eden Court. My secondary school that I was at didn't have a drama department, so that's kind of why I relied a lot on Eden Court. And it was kind of it was one of those things. I designed setting costumes for theatre, but I didn't know that was a job at that point, let alone how I would go about training for that job from here, I suppose. And it was a combination of kind of falling into stuff at Eden Court, and it was also, I really enjoyed kind of visual art and drawing and sketching, and it was a kind of way of putting both those things together and realising that what I was kind of sketching or doodling was actually a real job that people do. When you find that out, my kind of next move was to do HNC in technical theatre in Edinburgh, and then went to study at the Conservatoire in Glasgow, where I graduated from about 7 years ago now. So yeah, it was kind of discovering that it was a job at all, and then working out how you go into that.
What was the moment where you worked out it was a job? Where did that come?
I think for a long time I was set on being an animator. I was really set on, which is weirdly almost the same. I don't know, I think in my head it uses the same bits of your brain. You're telling stories through really kind of visual cues. And I think it was then realising that as well as people that animate the characters, there's folk that all do the design of the backdrops and the painted kind of animated backdrops, and then realising that then translated to live events and live things. So a bit of a weirdabout way, but yeah.
And did you come and see a lot of theatre then when you were younger? You can hear. And
Oh,
sort of
loads.
things?
Yeah, there we go. This is just the beacon of anything theatre arts happening up here. And I also worked front of house here for about 4 or 5 years, so I've seen lots of shows here.
Yeah. Did you find it sort of easy to find out, you know, how then you would go about training to do the job? Like, was there information kind of readily available?
Kind of. Even the course that I went on to study at uni, like Sir John Glasgow, hadn't really fully formed at that point either. So even, you know, doing Google searches for theatre design Scotland didn't really come up with a lot even then, and that wasn't that long ago. So it took a while, I think, actually, even though those cues are maybe quite obvious when you start looking. But yeah, not always dead obvious.
I wonder how that compares to you, Layla, because obviously you do a number of different things.
Yeah.
So what was your path? How did you get started?
Well, I grew up in North Wales, which maybe has a similar sort of landscape of like not very many theatres for me to access. But I knew that I wanted to do something in drama because I was obsessed with everything that I saw, and I think like my earliest theatrical memory was going to see The Importance of Being Earnest, and I was convinced I would one day be Lady Bracknell, and that was my only ambition. Yeah, so I went through like A-level with this idea that I was definitely going to be an actor because that was the job I could see. I think like a lot of people, that's the first thing that you can interact with. And then when I didn't go into drama school and all my dreams were dashed, I think I just like lost the idea of what I could then be. So I took like a bit of a roundabout back to it. So for a while I was working in homeless support in North Wales, really fulfilled, loved it. And then the Tory government were like, oh, if you go to university next year it's going to treble in fees. And I was like, oh, I should probably go now. So I'd previously lived in Edinburgh, so I thought, why not go there? I love the festival, I love the scene, but I'll go and do something really sensible and I'll become a teacher because that's a job and you have a salary. And so I went to Queen Margaret's with my head like really fixed on that's what I'm going to do. And I think I was there for like 24 hours. And like one of the lecturers was like, oh, you're really good at this, you were born to do this. And I was like, I was completely born to it. And then like, all the teaching went out the window and I was like then very fixated on doing something. And I think I'm naturally like to be in charge, so then I gravitated towards directing. I think a lot of directors naturally like to be in charge, can't help themselves. And then, yeah, I was really fortunate. I had amazing lecturers who really pushed me and encouraged me, and coming out of Queen Margaret's, I was really lucky to get a Federation of Scottish Theatre Assistant Director bursary with Kate Nelson and Ed Littlewood. And then from there I took another little loop around producing because people kept employing me to do that, but I think it taught me a lot. And then I, more like in the last few years, managed to pull that background into directing, and then as you all know, I recently won the St Andrews Award for playwriting, which was supported by Playwright Studio Scotland and the Buyer and Perth Theatre, and that has like taken me kind of to my now / lots of things career, I guess.
Your portfolio career.
Portfolio, yes.
We call it now. Jack, is there any kind of commonality there? Because you're also a portfolio career artist, like you do a number of different things. Like, did you know about one role first and then get into it that way, or how did you get started?
Portfolio artist. I think that speaks to the instability of trying to build any kind of sustainable income in the field. So I went to the high school which did have the drama department, Culloden Academy. It didn't have much else, but it had a drama department. No one in my family had done university before, so we were expected, me and my brother and sister, to go to university. And I didn't know what I was going to do. But I really liked writing, and I wrote every day. I wrote little stories. And I was good at English, and I was a drama kid as well, so I was good at drama. And then I decided I would try 1 year at the local college in Inverness, just to try it for 1 year, just to get the sass. just to get the student money, so I could take a break from my awful job in the Edinburgh woolen mill, which I hated, and I worked in retail all the way through uni, and that actually is the thing that motivates me the most, is the thought of having to do that again. So that's where the hunger comes from to keep on going. I knew directors existed, I knew writers existed. I always thought that I was not the type of person who would be that person. I would not be that. I didn't have the connections. I'm sure this is a thing widely felt. When you come from a place that is not the place where you see the directors living and working and doing the stuff, you feel that it's just not for me. I'm not going to find a way in, and it's silly to try. But when I was growing up, I watched lots of films. I didn't see much theatre. It didn't really. There was Eton Court. I never felt entirely welcome there until I was well into my teens. I don't know why. My family never saw theatre. They're part of the 67% of the country that don't watch theatre, according to there's a 2019 survey from the Scottish government. I was shocked. And actually, that number's gone up, of course, since the pandemic. Then I was, I actually quite liked the whole theatre lark, and I sort of stuck with it and found out that I was pretty good at it. I'm a bit of a reluctant director, but I'm a very enthusiastic writer. If I could just write, I would, but we have to wear all the different hats and be a portfolio artist. It's now a thing. It's very fetch. We're doing it. So, and then as I was going through, in university, even at and I love Inverness. I had an amazing time on the course, and it's funny, people stop asking where you went after a couple of years, and that's always nice, because I always feel like, in some ways, I talk to people now in the industry who, they went to the conservatoire, and I always think, oh my god, that must have been amazing, and they're like, oh well, it was this, it was that, but the stuff they talk about feels like the stuff I did, which is really quite assuring and nice. It's actually really about what you do. So when I left, or when I was finishing up, I was like, okay, it's 2019. I've got all these plans. The future is looking bright. And then the world ended, and then it didn't. And since then, I've just been figuring it out. And I've been lucky, because I wrote in lockdown, very early 2020. I had some pages, and I sent it through to Matthew at Dogstar, and he really, really liked the play. And then over lockdown, it was funny, distance didn't matter anymore, so I could get into rooms by just blagging my way in and just saying, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I want to be part of your Zoom thing. And they just let me in, which was really nice. And then things just came from that, and a lot of that just happened.
I think one thing that we encounter all the time is that at Playwright Studio is that everyone thinks there was a perfect way to do it that they didn't do. So obviously mainly we work with writers, and writers are convinced that whatever way they came to playwriting is the wrong one, and this out there somewhere is someone who has done the perfect thing, and there's a bunch of knowledge somewhere, and if you follow the right steps, that's what they should have done. And the thing of just having, it's difficult though, isn't it, to have the confidence just to say, I'm a writer. We believe that writers are just the people that write, but it sometimes feels there's an invisible barrier or something there. I think you've talked a wee bit about that.
Yeah, because I think we are the things we do, and I think that if you are writing anything in any capacity, then you're a writer. If you are making like TikToks on your phone, I would say that you are engaged in the act of filmmaking. I genuinely think that if you're telling a story to your friends in the pub and you get up and do the voices of and she said it like this and he said it like that, and you do the little voices, you're acting. I genuinely think we've got this very low bar to entry to these skills, and everyone's capable of doing that. So I agree, but I always feel that I came about it the wrong way. that I somehow. You guys ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean? You know that bit where he's on the very first movie when he's standing on the ship and it's coming in and the pier's there and he steps off the ship and the ship sinks. I feel like I'm just like that. I lucked out that I was on the sinking ship and I just stepped off at the right bit, and that's kind of what it feels a bit like. So yeah.
I think there's a really interesting thing about like the difference that often gets confused. I think about the difference between like craft and training and learning are really important, and then there's also the importance of anyone can be creative, anyone can make work, and there is a thing between those two things of going, you can recognize both that it's important to build your skills, but also have the confidence to say I'm doing this, and learning through doing is important too.
It takes courage to say I'm doing this professionally.
Well, yes, that's a whole. We'll come back to professionalism because that's really interesting. But a lot of people already have talked about the importance of university or colleges or training and what they've done. So Leslie, maybe you would tell us a bit about how you came into your role.
In a very roundabout way, as some people may know. So my interest in theatre goes way back when I was at school, which is quite a long time ago now. And you have that sort of those awful interviews with career advisors and what do you want to do, and everybody's an air traffic controller. Well, I told them I wanted to go to the Central School of Speech and Drama and do stage management. That's what I wanted to do at age 15. I was promptly told that is not a proper job. You can't do that. Go away and rethink. So I didn't. I went to the theatre occasionally, I suppose, as a child. Loved it. Didn't get to go as often as I liked. I read a lot. And then I discovered reading plays, loved reading plays, and really got into, I suppose, properly into theatre and drama via English literature. And I don't know whether that's something I'm allowed to say or not, but I did. So I read a lot.
You're allowed.
I read a lot of plays. I went to university. I did English. I did a lot of Renaissance drama, and I loved it. I loved the melodrama. I loved the blood and the guts, and the whole Duchess of Malfi thing. That was for me. I just absolutely loved it. And then I've always been quite interested in history, so then I was interested in drama and how it engages with its historical, cultural contexts, how it can sort of question hierarchy and authority and from below, and these interesting negotiations of power. So I went down very much an academic route quite early on, and I did a PhD in Renaissance drama. And I got teaching jobs in universities. I did all of that. And I taught Renaissance drama there, and eventually I found myself in Inverness at UHI, and I was teaching English literature, having sort of taken a career break for family reasons and things like that. Came back teaching English, and then there was a gap in drama, and somebody said to me, would you like to develop some drama courses for us and be programme leader for drama? I thought, drama? I don't do drama. It terrified me. And but then sometimes it takes other people to look at you and to sort of look at your skill set and say, actually, it's a bit like what you were just saying, Jack. You're already doing it, only you don't recognise that's what you're doing. So I thought, well, actually, yes, I do know all about dramas. Just don't ask me to act. As long as we've got other people who can, looking around the room, who can teach acting, I'm fine. I'm happy to talk about all the other stuff that goes round it, because I find that really, really interesting. It's not to say I'm devaluing acting, but that's not my strength. Let's put it that way. So yeah, that's how I've ended up doing that, and then I'm very involved in facilitating through that academic route. I found myself very involved in facilitating creative practice, which is, we were just talking about this earlier, so it's just when a postgraduate student will say, I want to write a play, or I want to develop some drama workshops, or I'm interested in doing something within the sort of context of theatre, and I can facilitate that. I help them to write a thesis about that. We don't often say too much about that because it puts people off. But so they make their wonderful creative thing, and then they write an academic thesis about how they did that, and what were their intentions, maybe some of the theoretical underpinnings. And I love that. It's so great. It's so great. So I don't write plays, but I feel like I'm helping other people to do that. So it's great.
Yeah. And it seems like that that course that you've set up has obviously been really important to a lot of theatre makers in the area. So that's the course that you did.
Yeah, and I should have said this but my first ever play that was professionally produced was the outcome of the creative practice masters that I did with Leslie as my supervisor. I failed to mention these things. I'm sorry.
I know.
I have said it now. The debt exists and will have to be paid. Thank you.
But I think it's something that's not always talked about. Is like the link between academic practice and then the generation of
Absolutely.
new work. Yeah. So, and Jimmy, you asked that we come to you last. Really, talk about how you got started. Do come in. Come in. It's okay. Hello. Don't worry. So yeah, how did you get started?
It's so great being surrounded with all these youngsters because it's so exciting for me. I do feel a little bit like a history lesson is going to come on here because it does seem like a different world I'm from. Rightly or wrongly, there's no point in me trying to pretend it's not that. I was thrown out of school in '74, never forgiven him. And then I was a VSO in the Falkland Islands for a year, which was, I'm from Sutherland, so coming to Inverness was the big city. And I managed to get through the year in the Falkland Islands, and I came back through South America, and my brother had ridden away to a drama college from me. I didn't know. So when we got back to the Scots Bar in Piccadilly, we got absolutely steamboats. And 25 minutes past 10, he said, "So, are you all right for your audition tomorrow?" And I said, "What are you saying, Walter? What the hell?" He said, "Your audition tomorrow. You got an audition tomorrow." I said, I cannot do maths. I am useless at maths. You know, I did no audition. Audition. I had no clue what he was talking about. So he explained to me, and I went up in the plane, in the BEA plane, which was so exciting. And I met this guy in Queen Margaret College, which was a domestic science college there. And it had a drama department. What are you laughing at? It had a drama department, and cut a long story short, I met this guy, and the boss was a guy called Jerry Slevin. He's dead, I can say this. And he had been at a do the night before, and he was pissed out of his brain. And he came down, he bow tie off, and he was standing at the top of the refectory. He came down, and I was sat there. It was a Saturday morning at 25 past 10, and I thought, my God, what's... So he came down, and it was just me and three girls with white hats on and white coats, cooking something, I don't know what it was. But so sat there, and he had a notepad and a pen. And I know that, mate. He was an actor, Jerry Slevin, And he came down and he says, "Hi." I said, "Hello, how are you?" And he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "James Ewell." And he didn't write anything. "Where'd you come from?" And I didn't quite understand the Central Belt accent at that time. "Where'd you come from?" That must mean, where you? So I said, "Brazil." Where have you just come from, Which was the truth. It's always best to say the truth. And I remember he went, "I'll write you a part, son. You start the 24th. So that was me in drama college. And then I was on a number 26 bus going in from Clermiston beside a lecturer called Sandy Nielsen, who he never actually lectured me, but I was 7 weeks I never learned a bloody thing. I got my grant, 254 quid, and we drank it in the Fox Covert Hotel. 3 nights of bloody great, fantastic. Anyway, so Sandy said to me, "How are you getting on?" I said, "Sandy, this is shit. This is no much cope, is it?" He said, and he was from Tain. He had Tain connections, and he said, "Do you want to act?" and I said, I have to act. Good, I said, I've got a play called The Jesuit. It starts a week on Monday at the Travers. You've got the equity card for Scotland. It was a closed shop. You couldn't just because you couldn't become an actor. It was a closed shop. You had to be a member of equity, and I had that card. So basically, that's saying, have 1 ounce of talent, have a hell of a lot of luck. I think that's basically it. So that was me in a play called The Jesuit at the Travers by Donald Campbell, who came from Wick, which and it was successful. And that's how I got it. That's how I started. 1976, 3rd of May.
Wow. And I mean, part of what you were saying there is it feels like a really, like there's different options now of how people get started.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real eye-opener for me doing this. I've just loved every second of it.
I liked your equation there of like 1 ounce of, what's the proportions? 1 ounce of...
Yeah, 1 ounce of talent maybe.
Okay.
A hell of a lot of luck. Yeah.
Much more luck.
Yeah, I think so. And hard work. But I don't know if that equates to anything now. I don't think, that's what I mean. Does that relate to you guys? I don't know. I don't know how, you know. I mean, I love watching youngsters, and the word I believe is networking. and, you know, and I think is that a degree course?
Yeah, we teach that.
You know what? I think it bloody well should be a degree course.
Yeah.
Because our networking was a different problem. Which I'm not going to get into. But it was no, I'm joking. It was a different thing. It was. I'll be honest with you, because we're up north. We're in my home. We're in the Highlands, and it's very important to me. And this is the thing. It's hard to say, but it's really hard to say. But the first time I felt at home in this industry, this is hard to say, but it was when I moved to London, because the Central Belt had an attitude towards me. There was nobody else with my voice. There was no one else. Jimmy Chisholm was in the same class, and Jimmy managed somehow to stay in college for 3 years. I don't know how he did it, but so there was nobody out there. There was no my voice. So when I moved to London, you were in this big pond, and it was nothing to do with if you were a Chooksor or you had an accent or because whatever people think, then we are looked at differently, especially if you're the only one there, and they think you're Irish to start with. So you've been not insulted, but you think, well, crap. So when I went to London, I realised this is a huge pond, and you just have to be good.
Yeah.
They don't care where I'm from.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm not deriding it, but that was that's the honest feeling. Was you got to swim. You have to swim. You have to, and you have to think on your feet and all these things. I'm sure you have to do exactly the same thing now. But it was, it was the big pond was great. You know.
Have any of you sort of? Well, I know obviously you came from North Wales, and you came to Edinburgh first.
Yeah.
And how was that then, in a similar way, kind of being in a very different situation?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I came to Edinburgh, I was about 20, and it was just because that's where the pen fell on the map, and that actually isn't a joke. It was me and my then partner were just like, wherever. And then I came back and went to Queen Margaret's. And I don't think that's similar. I think there's such a similarity between, not the same, but similarity between Welsh culture and Scottish culture, and I think there's lots of things that we have in common in terms of access to certain things, investment in certain things, the way our infrastructure runs. We're quite a rural economy as well. But I think the thing that probably chimed the most for me with what you were saying was when I graduated from Queen Margaret's, and this was not just one person, there's one person in particular that said this to me, and they will remain nameless, but asked me if I found it terribly debilitating having gone to such a terrible university and not gone to RCS.
What's RC? What is it?
What it was RCMD is now Royal Conservatoire, and that really shocked me. And at first I was like quite taken aback, and then I probably quite briefly went no, only when I meet people like you. And I think that was the time where I felt like completely excluded. And Matt has ability to go to those places. I think at that time they only took one Welsh female, one Welsh male, two Scottish. It wasn't like there's loads of access to it. I think when I was auditioning when I was younger and on that track, it took an awful lot of money to go to those drama schools and go to the auditions, and I was surrounded by people with very posh voices saying, oh well, we stayed in the Hilton last night, and I'd come down on like the early train and was knackered and sweaty and whatever. So I think that's when I felt that kind of like fish out of water thing and being judged for something that feels ridiculous to judge a person on. But what I will say is, though those people exist and I've come across them a lot in my career, they are not the majority at all. And I find more people who are like so appreciative of having a different path or going somewhere that they feel like you've worked hard and you've like taken every opportunity available to you. And I will add that Queen Margaret is not a terrible university. It's a brilliant university with amazing people working there. But I think that I think that attitude is dying. I really do, because I think most of the people that are working now are people like us who are not at all having that opinion, and who are really excited when someone has a different story and a different perspective and a different way in. I find that much more interesting and much more creative than someone who maybe has whatever the perfect thing is. But not so much moving from Wales to Scotland, other than I will say that the play that I did for the St Andrews Awards is titled A Dyn yn y Llong Danfer, which is the Welsh for The Man in the Submarine, was also my master's dissertation play. I should have said that, and thanked Glasgow Uni for that time and feedback. But I was really worried when I wrote it that it wouldn't, like where I live and work, it just wouldn't be welcome, because what on earth would somebody who's grown up in Scotland be interested in a play title like that? And so I was bowled over when it was picked and where people felt it was relevant, and I think that is also a sign of us being far less concerned about somebody's having a different language or coming from a different place or having a different experience, because I think probably one of the reasons it was picked was because it was something that maybe people hadn't necessarily seen before. So yeah, I think it's definitely getting better.
I would totally agree with you, thank God. I think it's far healthier now.
Yeah.
Having said that, it makes it hard because there's so many more people doing it. It's the double-edged sword, isn't it? And is that not why we're doing this festival? We're trying to not recreate, but trying to start again almost. It feels like we're starting again. It's almost like we've got to look with this festival, Matthews and you guys have set up, that we have to look really, really to the future. But I've got a feeling that we maybe have to look back to find out how did we didn't know that we were in the halcyon days. We didn't know that. I mean, it's so amazing with the, recently we've had the effect of the postal with the postal ITV program, and I was reading that, I thought, we had this every 3 months in the 70s and 80s. The things we put on had effect. Cathy Come Home changed the whole of the socials, the structure, of our government. So I think we need to not let this moment go away and keep reminding the powers that be, the suits, that how can you be shocked that it was a drama program? Actually, that's what we do. That is what we. That's not only what we do, but it's a vital, important part of our, our raison d'être. So I'm glad it's better. I really am.
But it's sort of, I think, to pick up something from what you both said there. There's what theatre can do is make that space for something that is really specific, to speak more universally. I know we all know this. So because my background is in literary management, what I would find all the time is that, say, writers in Scotland would assume that theatres in London would have no interest in reading their work. But what was actually happening there was they were, you know, and Jess as a literary manager too, maybe you find that too, people were opting themselves out of opportunities because they assumed that, you know, they wouldn't be interested. There was actually a great interest in the places that I worked for work that, as you say, spoke to a sort of a different specific.
I would say, and like on the topic of this, the reason for this discussion, I would say that when I started getting more success is when I stopped thinking about that and started just doing what felt authentic to me. You know, as like a marginalised person, I'm queer and I'm neurodivergent and I'm Welsh, and I wasn't writing about any of those things, and so or making that kind of work because I was making what I thought people would be interested in. I was boxing off that part of myself that was obviously the most interesting thing about me, is like what I actually experience, how I actually feel, how I love people, how I talk to people, what resonates with me. And I'd spent such a long time thinking I had to do what whoever they were, wanted, and the only time I started to have any success was when I sacked that off, because I was like, well, this isn't working. And then suddenly writing in my authentic voice, making work that I believed in, is when my career definitely took off. So I would massively agree with that.
I think it was you, Leslie, that made a point that I thought was really interesting about it took somebody else to recognise the strengths that you had and to point out to you some different paths, because part of what we're talking about is different paths in. So what was that?
I think that's really quite interesting, and I think this idea of just stopping worrying about doing something the right way or conforming to some sort of model. I think as soon as you get rid of that, it's really liberating. And in terms of, just as you were talking about drama as this incredible platform for communicating and reaching out to people, what I found within academia is that I'm really popular as the drama person, because all the scientists, you know, who I think are not going to take me seriously, they want to talk to me about drama because they've done this work and they want to communicate the results. And then I'll say to them, well, do you know it's not just about communicating ideas, it can be about you can use drama to do that, you know, fundamental research. You can use drama-based research methods. So I find myself increasingly talking to, you know, people involved in health science and, you know, kind of environmental research and things like that, interested in drama from those points of view. But yeah, just going back to that initial point about, you know, we're all full of self-doubt, aren't we? We're all imposters in our own heads, you know, let's face it. And sometimes it just takes somebody else to say, do you know what, you're really good at that, or that's really interesting. It might not be ready yet, but it's really interesting. There is something of real value there, and you know, just you know, you might need that external person just to give you the confidence and to do that. So I think that's what we should be doing in the education sector. That's what I try to do. And I hadn't thought, and it was actually a student, postgraduate student, who said to me 2 weeks ago, I know what you are, you're a facilitator. And I thought, oh, I'm a facilitator. I hadn't really thought of that before, but there you go.
And it took your brother applying for a drama school.
Yeah, you only need one person to believe in you. Yes, you only need one person, and then another one 10 years later. I find that it helps to have one every decade. And then hopefully in a different, maybe telly, and then one in theatre as well, one in the cinema. You know, that's a good. But one, just the one. You know, it's like life, isn't it? Yeah.
And Kenny, we talked about there, you mentioned, and I think Jack did too, about like the jobs that we can see, the visibilities. Jack, you were talking about this, the visibility of like, how can you see what a theatre director does? Like, they don't do it in public. Or how can you see what a designer does? And just thinking about those things, those people that end up being your champions or encourage you and things. Kenny, did you kind of have any people in your life that sort of spotted where you might be good and pointed you towards it, or or not.
No, definitely. I had some great drama teachers and great workshop leaders here as well. And even like as I've started doing work, the kind of director-designer relationship, quite often your director can be as much as mentor as well. I think what I've found, this is maybe a bit niche to design, but I'm sure there's similarities in directing and writing and performing as well, but in drama and in production, in design process and kind of production, there's usually quite an ecosystem of assistant designers and associate designers who model make or draft or do drawing or who support a kind of main designer, and that's something that is plentiful in London and in England and the US, but in Scotland there's not really that network of associates and assistants, and so I'm now an associate to another designer who's much further on in their career, and I've kind of only had a relationship for the past maybe 5 or 6 years, but that was hugely, it was kind of like, oh, this is the kind of setup I need, something where I'm learning the job, but there is like a really direct passing down of kind of career information. And it was kind of like, where's this been? It doesn't really exist in Scotland. There's not, every designer is kind of their own single person design studio, and they kind of do everything. So it was funny. And again, this designer was only able to take me on because of the scale of stuff they're working at. So it's like it's kind of chicken and egg. If there's not the network.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's huge. I didn't realise that was the case. I mean, when we in the 70s and 80s, I hate sounding like this, but the Lyceum had the designer, the Travers had the designer, at the Travers, I was very, very lucky to, you're right, mentors. Like there was a guy called Richard Wilson. It was an actor, and he was at the time very famous. He had a sitcom and all that. One Fruit in the Grave, but really he was a fantastic theatre director, and the populace didn't know that, but we in the industry knew that Richard was one of the best directors, that was around, and he'd come to Travers, and that was straight to the court, so we had it was a really, really healthy back and forth between, so it was like Halsey, it was just like, we thought this was the norm, If the show's good, it was a Dusty Hughes play, Heaven and Hell, Jimmy Chisholm's did it, it was Celia Emery's second job or whatever it was, and we were in there, and it was, you thought this is, but the designer was the Travers designer.
Yeah.
And he knew the space, he knew where the space was, what I mean? It wasn't like you come in for much, it was...
No, those days when designers had permanent positions.
That's bloody hard, yeah.
They're all gone.
Really?
Yeah, there's no... I think the two designers at Play Pint are the two only permanent design positions in the UK.
But there used to be sort of, I mean, in even what I was doing, there was a structure. So there were literary departments, there was literary assistant, and there was literary manager, and you learned how to do from observing. So and the same structure was there for designers. And I suppose I'm in the industry 20 years, so and that still feels like it was. It feels like that was a different lifetime. That structure that you could move through.
So much that's going.
Or for directors, the assistant directing roles. There's not even necessarily assistant directing roles.
Yeah. No, you're very lucky if you get an assistant director, I think, in your early career.
It does seem that, I mean, I've got to be careful, I suppose, because I love people in offices, but we do seem to be a situation where you're going to see a building and you see like 12 people in an office, and you think, what are they? What do they do? And I'm sure they work their backsides off. I know that, but you think, I don't remember. I'm trying to think. It was Sheila Harwood at the Travers. There was one woman who did the whole thing. She did the whole bloody thing.
We have
I'm not knocking anybody, but please don't think I'm going to get daggers and things.
We have no shortage of excellent mentors in this country. We have people that could 100% fill that role, and I think that it's very sad that we no longer have that inbuilt system of training up people and imparting that wisdom in a paid capacity, because that's critical. Because how can you ask people to take that time from, if they have families to provide for, they've got mortgages to pay, and you're asking them to take time to then impart that, it's just not going to really work unless it has some kind of support attached to it. And yes, I mean, I heard a lot at the festival, a lot of discussion about the role of administration and arts administration, but the truth is we have a larger industry today than we've ever had, and that's because things are growing, and that's the nature. We need more administrators. We need to, this is it, we're dealing with more money, it's going. I think that we're always going to have them. We're always going to have administrators. The problem is not in administration. I think that we're kind of encouraged by this unhelpful ontology to constantly view within the industry, we're siloed and we're not supposed to really like each other. And it's very easy to develop these rivalries, but it's not productive. I don't really know what the answer is, and I don't think it's one of those things that you can solve it by just, more money, just increase the money, because actually more money, while that's always a thing that's, I think is helpful. We talked in the blurb for this thing, they talk about the First Minister's commitment to doubling the culture budget, but we're yet to see any details. So how much of that goes to the Fringe or to Screen Scotland or to any of the many departments that culture spending covers? It's not just theatre, although we might think, when we think Creative Scotland, we only think theatre, but they cover all sorts of things. And yeah, I mean, I really, the thing as a writer that I am very concerned about is the decline of the literary department and the sort of the cutbacks that constantly seem to be happening within our major producing theatres. And then these floated plans of forming a big six group, which, well, it's still no one, maybe people know, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, and I have no power and no agency over what happens there. I just hope that whatever happens, that these departments can exist and the people can be, because artistic directors are now having to become the one-person literary department, basically, and that's not sustainable. For being artistic directors, that's a full-time job, and I worry about the state of programming if that is the case, because it's going to make it. First of all, it's going to shrink that circle, pull ladders up, and it's going to be harder to break in. But it's also going to hurt the quality of the work, I think, if you cut yourself off to new voices.
What do you mean by people who we don't want to like each other? What do you mean? I didn't understand that.
I feel that the way when times are a bit tight, and when we're looking down the last year, we were talking about a Creative Scotland 10% cut. I think that we're encouraged to develop rivalries with artists that get money and artists that don't get money. If we put a funding application in, if you and I make a project and we don't get the money, and then someone else gets $100,000, it's very easy for us to go, well, that's because X, Y, Z, and to be a bit bitter or jealous. But it's okay to be jealous, because we're people. We'll always have jealousy. That's something we have to live with, but it's not a productive feeling. And at the end of the day, good work has a magnetism of its own, and that doesn't always correlate to money. Sometimes the Creative Scotland don't read the pieces, the projects you're submitting. They don't know what the script looks like. They'll give it the money based on other things, and we can get into the merits of that model all we want. But basically, I feel like the scarcity mindset encourages artists to fight each other. And I don't think and that means, that applies across the whole field. I think that happens in directors and designers and writers, and it's because we're having to rely more and more on, okay, I'm the project lead, I assemble a team myself, and then I apply for money and I sort of form something, and there's no rep system, there's no reliable production happening from these big six producing theatres. It's formed independently, funded by the government. They go and they visit to the venues, and so it's different. It feels much more Wild West, and so that's where it comes from.
I just want to say that if the First Minister is listening, more money would solve everything.
I was also saying, my vote is for more money, because I agree the scarcity mindset is destructive, and it's scarcity because we haven't got we just physically don't have the funds.
Yeah.
Like I was just saying, I run before this. I run an event in Edinburgh called Page to Stage, and we support writers from across Scotland with extracts. We get them up on their feet. We get actors in, we get directors in, and everyone gets paid a little bit for their time. They get their expenses, and we just found out that we haven't been selected for having our funding moving forward. Which we'll reapply and lots of other things, but I just want to sort of say that's not Creative Scotland's fault. Like the feedback they gave on the application was that the application was great and they see the merits of what we do. They just physically don't have enough money, and there's nothing that we can do policy wise. There's nothing that we can do. Like if you've got £10 and 1,000 people are asking you for £10, like you just don't have enough. It doesn't matter how brilliant they are. So my vote is definitely for more money. We need more money.
I didn't say, I fully agree more money. It's also about how we allocate.
We're just teasing a little.
just in case this man's out there.
Do you think in Scotland there's a reason why, like for instance, we're having this festival? Why are we having? Yeah, is something happened in Scotland that means we don't have tie-up and we don't have 784 and we don't have Chivy at the Stag, which is the first show I saw?
I don't think there's the space to fail anymore as there was then.
But do you think there might be a reason? Why is there no money here? Why is nobody saying anything? Why is there no money here? Why?
Well, it's because we're enduring an austerity regime that has been in a work in progress for 14 years, or actually I would argue since the financial crisis in 2008, and that's a political choice.
You're all coming up with your brilliant questions right now. We're moving into the end game of this bit, but we're looking forward to hearing them. I suppose one of the things one thing I'm increasingly hearing people talking about how valuable literary departments is, and that is brilliant. When I worked in the literary department, nobody ever told me I was valuable. Ever. So I don't know if that was your experience, Jess.
You don't know what you got. You don't know what you got till it's gone, I think. Well,
I do, but I think there's a general point here about going, if things are valuable to you as an artist, communicating that to, whenever you can, whenever it's relevant, is really important. In the same way, I know we can only realise some things in retrospect, like, Jack only realised in retrospect that he hadn't thanked Leslie until but we don't always recognise at the time what the inputs are doing for us. But and that applies, I think, without getting too much on the soapbox about our representatives, our MSPs, our all those other things. Like if it's important to you to get more arts funding, that is one of the things that we can do. But without getting too far into arts funding. The last thing we kind of promised to talk about was kind of roles that you didn't know about, and I think you've all talked about that in a way because you've talked about different routes that you've taken. But does anyone on the panel have like a role that you came across that you just didn't know was an option? Have you ended up in a role that you just didn't know was an option, Jack?
So I've actually written for like video game projects, and that's something that is very, very different from the thing I trained to do. But actually writing for digital work it's a new kind of challenge, but it operates on a lot of the same principles. It's just telling a story in a slightly different way, and often you're telling way more than one story because they'll branch. I like to write things with lots of choices where the player has a lot of agency. And actually, it's funny, some of the stuff I've written as a result of that have become plays that I would like to make. So it's a kind of virtuous circle, actually. So don't think of your work in other creative mediums as separate, because whether you write poetry or you're a visual artist or you make films, that all feeds back into your own work and actually strengthens your work. There's a lot of hunger for interdisciplinary kinds of work, no matter what you are, if you're a designer or a director or a writer.
Could I just add to that? I think that's so interesting, and we do. I don't want to go on about our courses, but we do think about our students. We worry about them. What are they going to do when they finish? Where are they going to go? So we spend third-year students do a module called experiential learning, and it's about reflecting on strengths, discovering different roles associated with the theatre industry. Because of course, when they come to us, they're all going to be actors. So part of my job is to kind of introduce them to kind of different options and things like that. But one thing that we've discovered is that across a wide range of sectors, those kind of drama skills that we might recognise are incredibly relevant, are incredibly popular. So I would just say, you know, we talked about the portfolio artist. I'm going to take that away because I really like that. Portfolio artist, and you know, you will be doing bits of this and bits of that, and you'll be doing things like working in the Scottish Woolen Mill to facilitate.
Edinburgh Woolen Mill.
Sorry.
Other woolen mills are available.
Sorry. To facilitate your theatre activity or whatever.
Believe me, that was the least of it.
But I suppose what I want to say is, again, it's about not siloing skill sets and all of this and all of those things that make you a brilliant theatre maker, practitioner, also will make you brilliant in all kinds of other contexts. And we talked about being realistic, didn't we, at the start of this session? And I think probably everybody in this room knows that a career in theatre is not an easy route. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it, and it doesn't mean it's not worth doing. But I think most people will need to do other things at the same time, and that is not, you know, I don't think that should be seen as, I don't know, a weakness or I'm wasting my time doing something that's irrelevant and I actually really want to be doing this. Actually, those things that you do outside of your theatre career can feed it, and one day we'll probably get an amazing one-act piece about something that happens in the Edinburgh Woolen Mill.
And one thing I can say for sure is when it's things like sending your work, say if you're a writer, sending your work to theatres, they really do not care if you also have a full-time job. That is not relevant to in those structures. Of course, it's relevant to you. Like, how, you know, do you have enough money to pay your rent? Those sorts of questions, of course. But what I see most is writers, being the people we interact with most, putting that pressure on themselves, like that. This is what being a writer looks like, or I'm not really a writer unless I do this and this.
A lot of the time people set that, I'm not really this because I don't do. That's set by folks who have a lot of the advantages of just being, that's all they are, that's all they do, and so and then because they tend to be the more successful ones, that leaves an impact, and that's the imprint we take. It's not all the most writers in the world who work another job, who do all that to, you know, just to get through, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's economic reality.
And nothing is a waste of time. Like, I spent a lot of my time working for British Gas and training people to do very specific things with meters that bored me to tears, but the skills I learned at university definitely helped me do that job, and that job is now bearing fruit in a way that I never would have thought when I met somebody who was like, I want to write a play about people getting cut off on their meters, and I was like, I have so much to say about how that works, right? Nothing is a waste of time. The role that I probably came to that I didn't think I would be producing, which I'm now moving away from again, but it taught me an awful lot that's helped me as a director, that helps me as a writer. So like, whatever you're doing, just keep looking for those opportunities to plough that back into your creativity, and vice versa, that your creativity ploughs into that other role as well, because it isn't a waste of your time.
We're going to ask one last question, and then all of your questions. Well, it's not really a question. It's just Jimmy, you talked a bit about the different, where we're just going to talk about theatre. Did you find then working in different media, working in film and television, fed back into working in theatre, or how did you manage those different threads, or was it all sort of by accident?
Hell of a lot was by accident. Is it accident? Is it what, I don't know what it is, but it's history. But I think when I was starting in the 70s, it was sort of known that you did theatre for love. You did tally for fame, and you did film for money. I don't think it's the same now. I don't know how. Well, you better answer that. But that was possibly the truth. What was the question?
Do they all inform each other?
Ah,
Are
yes.
they against each other?
The thing that, yeah, the common feeling was that the Americans were terrific camera actors, film actors, because they were generally trained in that medium. So I remember, you know, I was very fortunate. The first, I think the second film I did was with is that my agent? was with a French director called Bertrand Tavernier, and it was shot in Scotland. Romy Schneider, Harry Dean Stanton, Harvey Keitel, and that. So this brilliant French director wanted to shoot in Glasgow. It was very atmospheric. Death Watch it was called, and so you learn, you watch. And I was watching. I had 3 or 4 scenes with Harvey Keitel. I had never heard of him. And you thought, yeah, he's doing something different. He's doing something different. So I was learning on the job, you know. And then you talk with people, and we weren't near as open as you guys are. I mean, fantastic listening to these, the chaps we're working with at the moment, openly talking about techniques and things. And I think, so, you know, we never ever do that, you know. When you work with directors like Richard Wilson or, you know, these Trevor Nunn and people like that, you learn from them one-to-one. But with cameras, it's different. It's a very technical thing. Thank you. So yes, it is different. It's technique. It's just technique, and you learn the hard way. I don't ever watch anything I've done. Right. Never, no. Because I usually hope I hear it from a director on the floor that says, Jimmy, take it down, man. Take it down. You know, you're this side, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then you go, yeah, get it good. Because you've got to try and sort of, once you're having your fag or you're making sandwich, think, yeah, I can see what it is. I can see that's coming in. You're coming in. So if you're going, I really don't want, you know, you're just going to say, I wish I hadn't done all that shit with being angry. Just be angry, feel it, you know. And eventually, the film acting became, it really did inform your theatre acting, because you became braver. I became braver on theatre, going, I don't need to feel. I'm feeling. As long as you're getting it. And I know, and then you just gauge, well, okay, it's a bigger theatre, so you're working at the Royal Court, which was a great space, and it was intimate. It was like the Bristol Old Vic. It was intimate, but it was big. You sensed what size to make things. You didn't actually go back and think, I'm going to make it that size. You just sensed it. You sensed it, you know. So yeah, they did. I think all mediums inform each other. They do, yeah. Yes.
And I think that sort of speaks to, I suppose, something that I think is true, and you've all brought up in a different way, of like how important it is to have other people around to, but also how you have to take responsibility for your own growth and throughout your career.
I would say, when I'm speaking with youngsters, that one thing is that, you know what, the thing is, we do plays, we're players. We do them in playhouses. Are you seeing a common thread word there?
Yeah.
Play.
Yeah.
Fun. Don't lose the fun. Please don't lose the fun. You know, when we do RSC, we do tragedies and all those things. You know, and that was almost impossible to keep a straight face, because you know. So when you did a tragedy, I remember doing Hamlet RSC, and yes, the last scene, it's a bloody impossible scene. Everybody's dying and whatever. It's Brian Blessed trying to play Claudius, you just can't give a straight face. Of course, when you do it, you know, so, and when you're doing comedy, it's absolutely serious, man. There's not a laugh. There's not a laugh in sight. It's so technical, do you know what I mean? But for the guys, everybody in now, don't miss the play. It's play. It's all we're doing. We're play acting, you know, and all this stuff about life, which is real. It seems to be far harder now. It seems to be, use the word mortgage. I'd never heard of a bloody mortgage. Do you know what I mean? It's like we were freer for some reason. It's like, you know, society made it. We were so lucky. We didn't. I mean, you know, listening to everybody, I'm just saying, gosh, I was so lucky, so tough for you guys. Just please keep going, please keep going. I've seen so much talent this last 4 days, you know, especially I'm biased from the north of Scotland, but it's here, and keep thinking out the way, keep thinking out the way, keep wanting to, you know, see it's all here.
Thank you so much for that. And that's another lovely note, I think, to ask for all of your questions straight away.
I have so many. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw them out rapid fire and we'll see which one sticks. In terms of everybody's come to their thing in a roundabout way, I don't think there is a right way, but there are easier routes. There are systems of patronage. There are certain people and connections you can make that will make your life easier. And that is one of the things, that, especially because it is hard as nails. One thing I was thinking over is there isn't that social connection anymore, that somebody who knows you and knows your work and goes, I've got a play on. I think you'd be getting on the spotlight to find actual acting roles is difficult as it is. Buildings are not... The career advice I got from a networking thing was get into front of house for a theatre. So that's like 6, maybe 12 roles across the Central Belt. Work there, rehearse in their bar, because you can get that room for free, and then build up enough of a personal connection, and then you can pitch them something. There was like 80 to 100 people in that room, and the advice was, there are 6 places here where you are guaranteed to get the opportunity to form a connection with somebody who has the power to open up this field to you. That's your best bet.
Was that the same one where they said you should sidestep what you want to do to find a way in with the theatre and then try and do
yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And like that's I know lots of emerging theatre companies that have sold out shows, sold out their entire runs. I've run an email newsletter. I've been very congratulatory of them for years, but no building will come and see them. No outreach officer is in that sort of community going, there's fantastic work being done. Is there the possibility of getting these actors in? Is there a possibility of getting, this company in? That is not a thing that I see. And if it's happening, God, I hope it is, and I hope I'm just looking in the wrong place. And the last one, because I'll run into these, is you constantly have to prove yourself, and it's never enough. There was an application that went out for a show by Company of Wolves, and we spoke to one of the people running that and said, could you please put it on a public notice board? Somewhere that's not like blocked by a subscription or somewhere. It got 500 applicants in the space of a couple of weeks. It was taken down and reposted with you need drama school experience. And then the 2 people who got it worked with the director, directly underneath them in training. And that is the reality of this. There is so little going around that productions don't want to open it out, because how is a one-person literary department who runs their own company meant to get back to 500 people? That's just not feasible on any scale. That's broken for all sides. I don't have any solutions to that. These were just the things that appeared to me.
I can say one thing to some of that, which is that quite often when I would be that person going to see work for a theatre, the people involved didn't know I was there. So I'm not saying that's always happening, but I think there is a thing about visibility. We talked about it earlier, of like but anyway, it's not to speak against your point, just to say quite often people don't know that you're there. Was there a specific question in there that you wanted to ask?
I just wanted to throw some provocations into the air and see how people responded.
Do you think it's hard? Do you think it's... And I don't know the answer to this. Do you think it's harder now than, say, 50 years ago, where there was a closed shop?
I think economically, the fringe began because people wanted to start their own thing. Yeah. There is no money in space. The people do not have the freedom in their budgets, the freedom in their time to, I run an online writers group, and physically getting people even to an hour on a Wednesday night is impossible because they're working double shifts just to stay alive.
What's your name, sorry?
Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. So would you think then, do you think there's possibly a lot more numbers wanting to be part of of the family now? Do you think there's more people who, you know...
More mouths, less food.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, especially with all the cuts over the last, since the financial crisis, or possibly earlier.
I think it started earlier. I think that it started earlier.
Wages decoupled from productivity in the 70s, and we've been losing money ever since. So that's a long time.
I think that's like where we are at, and I don't want to. I'm never gonna not support that, and I think that everything you said is completely valid and totally chimes with my experience. What I would say, in a sort of with a view to be more positive, is don't devalue what you're doing and only value what's happening in those buildings, because I wasn't in any of those buildings, and the work that I was making was still really good, and it was still hitting the public. I was doing it on a 2x4 bit of wood at the Fringe, in the Free Fringe, and there were real people coming up to us after every show saying, that moved me. So just because it wasn't on at the Traverse, or it wasn't on at the Lyceum, it wasn't on at Eden Court, don't devalue your writers group, don't devalue the work you're doing. If you are reaching the people that you need to reach, and you are having quality conversations with them, then that is the arts industry, that is the arts sector. It doesn't need a stamp on it from some artistic director in some big building to make it valid. You're doing something that is contributing already. And I just want to say, like, more of that. Make it. Just make it work. And,
You'll
and
make it. I know you will.
I will, but I hope it will pay my bills one day, because that is something that this
that's another thing where I'm seeing the difference. You know, I felt we were travelling players. You know, that's what the feel. It sounds a bit wanky, but it was. You didn't feel you were a travelling player. You didn't. You know, I didn't have anywhere to stay. I stayed on floors and things, and it was the way. I wasn't alone. You know, it was like it's because I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, by the way. I'm just trying to illustrate. You know, so you never had the worry of rent. You know, because you'd be crashing on somebody's floor if you were doing a show somewhere. If you got lucky enough to get a gig, you know, and you crash and you move. I remember I was at the Crucible Theatre for a year and a half in Sheffield, and it was the first year that the World Snooker happened. and Peter James was the artistic director, and he said, "What are you doing now, Jimmy?" I said, "Oh shit, man, I've drunk all the holiday pay." You know, he said, "I know that. So I'm going to do a show at the Travers. I've been asked to." I said, "When's that? 10 days time." He said, "Right. What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to hitch. I think I'll hitch up to." He said, "No, you don't hitch from Sheffield to Edinburgh. Man. Listen, there's this thing starting next week. It's billiards or something." He said, "We're holding it in the theatre. Why don't you take dressing? Have dressing room 7 and stay there, and then you can get the bus up to, you know." So the world, I had my socks and pants were drying outside when you know, Cliff Thorburn and everybody would be walking in the first year of the Crucible Theatre at the World Snooker. So do you know? I mean, I'm trying to explain that we did feel like travelling players. We didn't know it at the time. That's what I'm trying to say. You didn't know it at your time. We were sort of footloose and fancy free. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's. And I would love if you could try. I don't know how you can try and get that in, but just believe. Honest to God, you guys, you've got it in your hearts. I can tell everybody I work with this week. You've got it in your hearts. You've got it in your hearts, and you've got it in the talent store as well.
I think it's going to happen, and I want to come in and say as well, like, you know, we studied together. I think it's very easy to. We're in a weird moment of transition post-pandemic, and it's very easy to think that the world kind of did end because a lot of things, glitches in the system, became permanent fixtures as a result. But I also think that we are now represented with an amazing opportunity in our culture at the moment. Like, we actually, far from being powerless, I think we actually hold the cards. I think we do. And I think it's very easy to give into doomerism about this, because I have been that. I have done that. But when I was able, I took a big chance in 2019 when I was doing the Creative Prague, I worked all summer on total grunt work, locations thing on No Time to Die. It was awful. Pinewood film stuff, driving people around and doing awful things out in Ardverky for 3 months in every bit of weather. It was awful. But the money from that financed my research trip to Svalbard, which became the play Nightlands, which was my first professional show.
You seen you working a Bond film?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
Well, in Scotland when I was.
But it was just pure. It was, you were working on a Bond film, and there's the Aston Martin, sure, but there's the bins, and you've got to clean them out. So
you're still on the set.
Still on the set, and I did meet Daniel Craig, but no one calls him that. They call him DC, which is very weird. DC, can I get you a coffee? But then that produced the thing, and the opportunity to go to a place I never thought I'd ever be, to write something, and then people were interested by the story of how that work came to be. So yeah, it's hard, but there's so much possibility, and there are no real rules to what you can actually do. Like, if you want to go and write a play and you want to go to Mongolia to research it, just grind really hard, get a plane ticket, go over there, do it.
Yeah.
But that's never changed. That's never changed. That's never changed.
I can't take that away from you.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I was going to say, you talked earlier on about that whole thing, 10% this, and I think probably the three: working hard, luck, and talent.
Yeah.
But I think the other one is passion, that actually is something you care about so much, being part of the industry. And you talked earlier on about, starting off, you wanted to go to drama college, you wanted to be an actor, and so many of your students, that's what they've got into. But it becomes your life. I mean, I've been lucky enough to continue to work in an arts role most of my adult life. I'm not working in theatre, and I hate every minute of the fact that I'm not doing that. And I can't at the moment, it isn't viable for me, but I come and see everything I possibly can. My world is still that theatre world, and when my kids go off to university, I will go and disappear back to the central belt and get some work again for a while and be back in theatre. But I'll do whatever job I need to ensure that I get to be part of that life in some way. And I think, if it matters to you, you become that writer or that producer, you do whatever other job allows you. And at the times when it's not paid work, you just do voluntary stuff, you do community stuff, you do whatever it takes to be able to be part of that, because it adds to all of those skills, exactly the way you said.
I think the day of the starving artist in the garret, there's no we can't afford that now. You can't afford to be the starving artist in the garret. You've got to. I don't know why that is, mind you, but I don't think that can exist anymore. Reality is. It's different. It's a different reality now.
But also, I was going to say that I think, listening to Jack and Layla, I mean, what you're describing there is a really entrepreneurial approach to your creativity.
Industry's changed to that 100%.
And I think that's something that we have to be mindful of. That creativity, whether it's in the theatre or anywhere else, it's not confined to buildings, and it's not confined to job roles. And as you say, if you're passionate about it, you'll make it happen, maybe in a small way with a small audience, but it's still happening and it's still valid, and you'll learn through doing that.
I think that's a healthy thing that's happened. I don't think we were just rehearsing and going to have a pint.
So from what you're saying as well, like this nature of the closed shop, right?
Yeah.
Well, that to be in is you're in. But to be out feels quite bad, and so I really love talking to folks who lived through those halcyon days, and the touring that you describe especially always interests me, because touring is so different these days, and happens so much less than it used to, which is that is an objectively bad thing in my books. But the thing that I think is really important is that the good work good work doesn't need an institution. Good work exists independently of institute, and it brings everyone to the table. Like the good work has the magnetism all by itself, and that is the thing.
I agree with you, and I also would extend to say institutions need good work.
Oh yes, well,
So
they see it and they think, oh my god, I need that.
Yeah, and if you're experiencing a closed shop, open your own damn shop and make your shop better than their shop, and then they're going to start shopping in your shop. And believe me, you will spend a really long time with people ignoring you, and then like suddenly, for whatever reason, you're going to be the hot name in the room for 20 seconds and be like, what is this? And then things happen. It's because if you keep making your work and it's good, then just keep getting it out there, keep getting it seen. And there are so many things underneath that we could say about politics and whatever, but ultimately, if you have something important to say, something you care about enough that you think other people should come to a room and listen to you, keep saying it.
And I think it cuts past, it circumvents. We talk about networking and this word, but actually, it's almost like the good work is a cheat code, because that actually does the networking. People get a cheat code. It's like it's a way to get around it. It's a shortcut around it, because then if you do the good work, the people that you need to meet and greet and glad hand and all that doesn't matter. They come to you, right? That's the cool part about you do something and suddenly there's something there.
You said a very interesting thing about touring, and it's sad that we don't tour, because in my how many years, whatever it was, two things will always stand out for me. And one was, and we're both to do with touring, and it's in the theatre, and it was the audience tell you what the piece is about. You think it's the writer, and you think it's you think it's the writer, and you think it's you. Well, I had two experiences in my I don't know how many plays or whatever, but when somebody asked about it, we did Romeo and Juliet in Belfast in 1986, when the Troubles were going on. That audience told us we're two households both alike in fair Verona. And the other one was 3 weeks before the Balkans War. We were in Serbia touring King Lear and Midsummer Night's Dream. And when Richard Briers, a guy called Richard Briers was Lear, and we just went on the show in Zagreb, and I don't remember doing the show. I was playing Kent, and I came off, and Dickie said, "What the fuck? What happened? What was that?" And Mr. Branagh was Edgar, and he said, "Well, I don't remember doing that show." I said, "No, do I? I don't remember doing the show. Nobody." And it was the audience. It was the electricity of that audience who knew that piece about dividing up your kingdom being divided up, and 10 days later they were at full-scale war. And that's why touring is vital. The audiences are so, I don't know, that's when the magic, the real magic has happened for me.
That's a good note from our exiting guest. Thank you for coming. That we are just in the last 4 minutes here. So you had a question.
I did, yeah. I just wanted to reflect that if I had to sort of summarize in a word or a few what I've heard today, I think the word I would attribute to this conversation is expectation and reevaluating expectation of what a career in theatre might look like. And it seems like for each of you in your own way there was a reevaluation of that, whether it was figuring out that your career was possible, or the thing you're interested in was possible to do as a career. I guess I would be curious, in a word or a few, under a sentence, what would you say, I'm not an emerging artist, but what would you say to someone pursuing a career in theatre? Whether that's a word to keep with them, or a sentence, or a few words, but it must be a sentence.
Let's go along this way.
Flipping heck.
Yeah.
What would I say? Something emerging. I think I don't know.
Or to someone, not even emerging, but to somebody pursuing a career in the arts.
I'm getting sort of cheesy advertising slogans in my mind here. I think it's just make the work. Just make the work. Just do it.
It's the only thing that is actually in your control as well.
Yeah, just make the work.
To thine own self be true.
Lovely.
Hold on tight.
I got a bunch of things written here. I haven't used any of it,
It's
so
not one sentence.
I'm gonna pick one bit,
Pick
okay?
one sentence.
When we enter a creative space, we have a chance to build that better thing.
Excellent. Good sentence. Penny?
I want to see something really practical, like pay your taxes, but I'm gonna maybe echo.
Only from a lighting designer.
I'm gonna maybe echo the first point though. Like, just protect the work, and I think you'll realise how much protect your work and protect what you feel about it, and everything just will kind of come from there. I think is what. That is so close to being a cheesy slogan, but I think having now graduated and had some dark freelance days and come back out of it, it's like it is just about protecting the work. I think.
If there are other questions, I would suggest you can ambush the panel as they walk out of the room. I therefore take no responsibility once they've left in you accosting them. But thank you all for coming and for your brilliant thoughts, and thank you so much to the panel. Let's all now clap. And obviously, if you enjoyed this session, there are other things. There's little programs downstairs. Come to more of our events. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Phil.
That was